Hi, my name is Maria Five. Welcome to my channel if you're new. Welcome back to my channel if you are not so new. I am here today talking about a novel and a make and some tea, and I have gifts from Christmas. So my friend Shannon gave me a little package, and I have a bookmark here. I should do that actually. I don't know if you can see it, but it's an incredibly cool dragon. And I'll first show you this one. It's a book journal. And Life is Too Short for a Bad Book. And it's filled with, all kinds of pages that you can document what you're reading, what you want to read, wish lists, important things like that. So very cool. And then there's this one, Cats and Books 2025 Planner. And this one, oh my gosh, there are stacks of books. There are kitties on every other page. I'm so in love with this. There's, lots of kitties. And then, there's these everyday breakdowns. There's a month breakdown or overview. And then things like this, where there are just stacks of books. And of course, as any reader will agree, it's kind of fun to go through going, I've read that, I haven't read that. It's more newer books than not, but there's all the classics in here as well. I'm really enjoying it. So I'm filling it out and planning these vlogs, and I'm really enjoying it. So thank you so much, Shannon, if you're watching. Yay. So for the make today, it's actually not as cold as it has been. I know this sweater kind of gives it away, but it is actually not that cold out. But I have made or crocheted myself a headband. I just see something I gotta weave in there. But anyway, just a headband. And this is, I don't know what it is. It's plushy. It's so soft. But yes, this is, just a headband, just for my ears really bother me in the wind. And so, today it would be okay because it's not actually that cold out. But, if it's really cold out, this wouldn't cut it. I do go for the full-on toque. But then I don't have a curly, big, poofy hairstyle. It's all pretty much like this. And if it's not like this and it's up, well, then I got to use some water or some product and kind of smooth it down, Anyway, the tea I have here, it's a Ceylon Earl Grey from my sister-in-law. And you know what? I haven't even tried it yet. I've just made it. Oh, it's good. It's quite strong. Exactly how I like it's Earl Grey, so it's got the bergamot, but it's got that good, strong black tea that I really, really like. I made it and then kind of got myself set up here. So there we are, some Earl Grey tea and the book. Okay, so the book I have is called The Lost Bookshop by Evie Woods, published in 2023. So not particularly old. Should still be available in bookstores. It's definitely available at your local library. There's been so many books, and I do mean so many books. There's this one, The Lost Bookshop, Evie Woods. There's The Last Garden in England, The Personal Librarian, The Bookshop, 84 Charing Cross Road, The Little Paris Bookshop, The Lost and Found Bookshop, The Bookshop on the Corner. Anyway, there are a lot of books that have bookstore in the title, and anybody that's a fairly avid reader, anybody that's worked at a library will typically read them. And a lot of those take place in Scotland and Edinburgh. So there's a lot of books talking about books. And if you're an avid reader or a librarian, it's always fun because they always reference other titles, other novels that you've probably read. And there's this little, I don't know, it's kind of just a little smile on the inside. So I don't know. I really enjoy books like that. And so if I see, anything to do with Bookshop, odds are I'm going to pick it up. They're not always wonderful. They are not always wonderful. And there's always this theme of women and how they never, especially if it takes place obviously in the 1800s, women just were literally the second sex, second class citizens. There's a book reference for you. Simone de Beauvoir, the second sex. Yeah, and it's a theme that I think it's so overdone. It's like, yeah, we all know it. Okay, let's move on. Let's not harp on the past. Anyway, I don't know. All right, The Lost Bookshop. So we have two timelines. The first one is from 1921 to 1952. And this is Opaline Carlyle, but she also went as Opaline Gray. Can you guess why? Yes, she had to hide her identity from evil men. I know there are elements of predictability, of course, but I mean it's a brilliant book. It really is. Okay, and then there is Martha and Martha's story with Henry, and it says 9 months ago to present. So 9 months ago in like present day. It's present day. There are cell phones, everything's, rather current. So we've got the two stories going along, and of course with every book, they merge at the end and you see the connection, but the authors will typically do a lot of foreshadowing so that you as the reader, you know what's going to happen, because they've told you, not in so many words, but they've told you. Nevertheless, okay, Opaline's story. Here's a woman who was upper middle class. No, she considers herself middle class. She's not a lord or a lady or an earl or anything like that, but they have money. It's her and her brother and their parents. She grows up, in the countryside. She's, there's money, blah, 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 and she is told she's going to marry this guy, and she doesn't like him, doesn't even know him, doesn't like him at all. Anyway, so it's an arranged marriage, and she revolts, rebels, and packs up and moves to the continent, namely France. Moves to Paris and she doesn't have a lot of money because, women didn't back then. Lots of women don't now, but really, really back then because, women didn't work and weren't supposed to have anything. Everything belonged to the men. I know, age-old downtrodden theme, right? Okay, let's move on. You got to get past that. You really do. And I mean, I did. I struggled with, you can tell, I struggled with this. It's like, oh, come on. And you wonder why I like young adults sometimes, because it gets away from all that. Just different questions, right? The novel asks different questions. This one, she moves away, runs away, moves to Paris, ends up finding a job in a bookshop, and has a very good friend, Jane. They become very close. And then she meets this guy. There's always a guy, Armand, who sweeps her off her feet, and there's, a budding romance coming. And then all of a sudden her brother and this guy, I can't remember his name. Shoot. Anyway, they find her. They literally pick her up and move her into a hotel, and that's it. That's the end of it. And then Armand comes to her rescue and says, I know somebody. We're going to get you safe passage and you're going to Ireland. So off she goes to Ireland. And it doesn't really pan out. The guy that she was going to work for has passed on, but meets his son. And his son says, well, here's the shop. Maybe, take a look. Maybe we can work something out. And of course it all works out. So she has a shop. So she becomes an independent bookseller, book trader, looking for those elusive manuscripts that will fetch a lot, and always under the arm or under the tutelage of, somebody that's more in the field, as Armand was. Armand was, is not was, is very much part of it. Yes. So he takes her to her first auction, and she sees the thrill of being able to, win a bid and win a manuscript. And anyway, yes, she gets pregnant, sleeps with Armand, gets pregnant, and doesn't tell him for quite a while. And she's like, okay, well, I'm going to do this. This is what I'm going to do. This is what life has thrown at me. And so she's quite excited for she knows it's a girl. We don't know how much she knows, but she knows it's a girl. And she's quite thrilled about the whole thing. And then suddenly Armand shows up. And he says, well, I feel like I sense that there's something you want to tell me. And then she, in her brain, goes, do I tell him about this manuscript? Do I tell him about the baby? And that's when at that moment, she realizes she doesn't trust him. So this is Opaline. That's all, early 1900s, 20s, up to 1952. Yeah. So that's her story. Meanwhile, and of course the novel goes back and forth as they do, right? So meanwhile, there's Martha, and she is married in Ireland, is married to someone who is incredibly abusive, and she runs away, leaves him, and finds this job as a servant, a maid, someone who does the hair, prepares the breakfast, and cleans the house, and polishes the silver, and, kind of looks after everything. Yeah. So she has this position. It's Henry. Henry is looking for the Lost Bookshop, and finally we get to it. He's looking for the Lost Bookshop. So he runs into Martha. Martha asks her employer, and her employer says, oh, and she's really quite vague about the whole thing. But there was this incident where one of her friends saw the bookshop. So she relates this eventually to Henry. Henry and Martha have this very, very, in my opinion, please do not take offense at this, in my opinion, very, very English relationship where they don't talk. They don't express themselves. They don't say what they mean or what they feel. And there's always this underlying, oh, what's the point? They don't get me anyway. There's nothing here. So it's a source of frustration. It's a source of tension for us as the reader, because we want to give both of them a good shake up going, what are you doing? Just say it and everything will be solved magically. I mean, I do know people now that are like that, and they have no filter and they just say anything and everything. And part of me is like, yeah, there does need to be a bit of a filter there. On the other hand, you always know exactly where you stand. There is no BS. There is no guesswork. There is nothing. And so, yeah, you get it. I know you know people like that. Anyway, so Martha and Henry have this very, very frustrating relationship where there's this back and forth, and they both have, of course, very strong feelings for each other, but nobody says anything, and there's a lot of miscommunication and misinterpretation. And Henry actually reminds me a lot of The Unlikely Pilgrimage of Harold Fry. He reminds me so much of that. Yeah, you could just see Henry becoming Harold, in 40 years. I know that's kind of a funny thing to say, completely different, but I mean, very English, and very this lack of communication and lack of saying anything that matters, which to me, I do read a lot, yes. To me, is just this constant theme. It's this, it keeps surfacing in a lot of English novels, which, I mean, I do read a lot of. Yeah. Yes, of course, a good part of them are going to be English, British, and yes, there's this whole, and by British I mean UK. I don't mean just English. England, Ireland, Welsh, all of that whole gamut, shall we say. I gotta throw that in there every single one, don't I? Every vlog, shall we say? I notice that when I'm watching them, rewatching them, like, oh, there it is again. And sorry, yes, yeah, there it's this things work out. The two stories collide, and it's a really good story. But I don't want to give too much away. I might have already. But yeah, really delightful. And if you are so inclined, please pick it up and give it a read and takes on it. All right. Thank you so much for watching. Take care. Bye bye.